The smell of ozone never leaves you. Even now, decades later, when I close my eyes, I'm back in that command pit. The acrid bite of overworked systems filling my nostrils. The low hum of a Victory-class Star Destroyer's reactor vibrating through deck plates into my boots. I was born on Anaxes, in the Azurite Quarter, where naval officers raised their children within sight of the shipyards, and my father told me once that the smell of a warship was the smell of civilization itself. Power contained, order maintained, the galaxy held together by durasteel and discipline. He was the captain of a Venator class during the Clone Wars, and he died when a separatist mine tore through his ship's bridge 3 months before the war ended. I was 11 years old. My mother received his command cylinder and his medals, and a letter from the Supreme Chancellor explaining that his sacrifice had preserved the Republic. I remember thinking the cylinder was so small for something that had commanded a ship carrying 7,000 souls. I joined the Imperial Naval Academy at 16, the year the Empire truly consolidated its power, when the last remnants of separatist resistance were being hunted down and the new order was being written across every system. My instructors were Clone Wars veterans who'd served under Jedi generals, and they taught us that the Republic had failed because it had been too soft, too democratic, too willing to negotiate with those who would see civilization burn. The Empire, they said, would not make those mistakes. Order would be maintained through strength. Peace through power. I believed them. God help me, I believed every word. I graduated 3rd in my class and received my first posting as a junior tactical officer aboard the Inexorable, a Victory-class Star Destroyer assigned to pacification operations in the Outer Rim. The ship was 12 years old, retrofitted with upgraded weapons systems, but still bearing scars from the Clone Wars, patch welds on the hull where separatist fire had scored the armor, replacement deck sections that didn't quite match the original construction. She was commanded by Captain Hallis Druven, a man in his 50s who'd been an admiral's aide during the Clone Wars, and spoke with the measured certainty of someone who'd seen the Republic's collapse and understood why the Empire was necessary. He had kind eyes. I remember that. He would stand at the forward viewport and watch hyperspace tunnel past, and once he told me that every hour we spent patrolling was an hour that some family on some planet could sleep safely, knowing the Empire was watching. The Inexorable spent 3 years hunting pirates, suppressing local rebellions, and reminding frontier systems that Imperial authority extended even to the galaxy's edge. We interdicted smugglers running weapons to insurgent groups. We bombarded rebel strongholds from orbit. We enforced blockades that starved resistance movements into submission. I watched it all from the tactical station, calculating firing solutions, coordinating TIE fighter deployments, ensuring that the Empire's will was executed with maximum efficiency. Good men and women served aboard the Inexorable, engineers who kept our aging systems running, gunners who could put a turbo laser bolt through a target at maximum range, pilots who flew cap patrols until exhaustion made their hands shake. We were maintaining order. We were protecting civilization. We were doing our duty. I made lieutenant at 23 and was promoted to senior tactical officer. Captain Druven called me to his ready room and told me I had the makings of a fine officer, that the Empire needed people like me, people who understood that hard decisions were necessary to maintain peace. He poured me a glass of Alderaanian wine. This was before Alderaan, before everything changed, and we toasted to the Emperor and the order he'd brought to a broken galaxy. I believed I was serving something greater than myself. I believed my father would have been proud. Everything changed when we received orders to investigate reports of a rebel cell on Raltair III, a minor agricultural world in a sector so remote it barely appeared on navigation charts. Intelligence suggested the rebels were using the planet as a supply depot, funneling weapons and equipment to insurgent groups throughout the region. Our orders were clear: locate the depot, neutralize rebel forces, and ensure the planet's continued loyalty to the Empire. Standard pacification operation, the kind we'd executed dozens of times. Captain Druven assembled the senior staff and laid out the tactical plan with his usual precision. Orbital bombardment to soften defenses, ground assault to secure key locations, followed by systematic searches of suspected rebel sympathizers. I calculated the firing solutions, identified optimal bombardment coordinates, and prepared the assault shuttle loadout. Everything by procedure, everything according to doctrine. We dropped out of hyperspace above Raltair III at dawn, local time. The planet was beautiful. Green continents, blue oceans, wisps of white cloud. Scans detected a single city of maybe 30,000 inhabitants. Agricultural settlements scattered across the main continent, and what appeared to be a small starport with several freighters in dock. No planetary shields, no defense platforms, no military installations. Captain Druven ordered a sensor sweep for the rebel depot while we maneuvered into orbital position. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, each officer executing their assigned role, the ship humming with purposeful activity. The sensor sweep found nothing. No weapons stockpiles, no military communications, no unusual power signatures, just farms and homes and the normal infrastructure of a frontier agricultural world. The intelligence officer reviewed the data 3 times, checking for stealth technology or underground facilities. Nothing. Captain Druven contacted Sector Command for clarification. The response came within the hour. Intelligence reports indicated rebel activity on Raltair III. The depot must be well concealed. We were to conduct a thorough ground search and interrogate local officials. Rebels were known to hide among civilian populations. We were to be thorough. I remember the uncomfortable silence on the bridge after that transmission, the way officers exchanged glances without speaking, the way Captain Druven stood at the viewport for a long time, staring down at the planet before giving the order to deploy ground forces. We sent down 4 companies of stormtroopers with orders to search the city and surrounding settlements. I watched from the bridge as the assault shuttles descended through the atmosphere, their heat trails like scars across the morning sky. The reports came back over the next 6 hours. No rebel depot, no weapons caches, no evidence of insurgent activity beyond some anti-imperial graffiti in the city center and a few seditious pamphlets found in a local market. The stormtrooper commander recommended we detain several individuals for questioning, but suggested the intelligence report had been inaccurate or outdated. Raltair III appeared to be exactly what it claimed, a minor agricultural world. Poor and isolated, barely aware of galactic politics beyond the taxes they paid to the Empire. Captain Druven ordered the troops to withdraw and prepared to report our findings to Sector Command. He drafted a message explaining that no rebel presence had been detected, recommending that intelligence review their sources. He seemed relieved, I thought, as if he'd been dreading finding what we'd been sent to find. Then the second transmission arrived from Sector Command, and everything I believed shattered like transparent steel under a turbo laser blast. The message was brief and absolutely clear. Intel sources were reliable. Raltair III was harboring rebels. The population was either complicit or willfully ignorant. Make an example. Show the sector what happens to worlds that shelter enemies of the Empire. We were to execute a base Delta Zero operation, total destruction of all cities and population centers, reduction of the planet to a state incapable of supporting life, orbital bombardment, complete planetary pacification, I read the orders 3 times, certain I'd misunderstood, but the language was unambiguous, the authentication codes were correct, and the directive came from Admiral Jared himself, the sector commander. Captain Druven stood at the tactical station, reading over my shoulder, and I heard his breathing grow ragged. "There must be a mistake," he said quietly. "Send a confirmation request. This can't be right." I sent the request. The response came within minutes. "Orders confirmed. Execute base Delta Zero. No further communication necessary." The bridge went absolutely silent. Every officer stood frozen at their stations, and I could feel the weight of what we'd been commanded to do pressing down like the gravity of a black hole. 30,000 people, civilians, farmers and merchants and children. No rebel depot, no insurgent forces, no military target, just a planet that might have harbored someone who once helped someone who might have been a rebel, and we were ordered to kill them all. "I need to speak with the Admiral directly," Captain Druven said, his voice tight with control. "Open a priority channel to Sector Command." The communications officer worked his station, then shook his head. "Admiral Jared is unavailable, sir. His aide says the orders stand and require no further discussion." Druven's hands trembled as he gripped the railing. "Connect me with Imperial High Command. This requires clarification from—" "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, his voice cracking. "I'm receiving a follow-up transmission. If we do not begin bombardment within 2 hours, we will be reported for insubordination and failure to execute lawful orders. We are advised that the adjudicator is in the adjacent sector and can relieve us if we are unable to perform our assigned mission." The threat was clear. Execute the order or be replaced by a crew that would, and face court-martial for disobeying direct commands during a time of war. Yes, we were always at war, against rebels and insurgents and anyone who questioned imperial authority. Disobedience meant execution, not just for the captain, but potentially for the entire senior staff who'd supported his refusal. I watched Captain Druven age a decade in that moment. The kind eyes I remembered went hollow, and when he turned to look at the planet below, I saw something break inside him. "Tactical," he said quietly, his voice empty of everything that had made him human. "Calculate firing solutions for all population centers. Prepare for sustained bombardment." "Sir," I heard myself say, though I don't remember deciding to speak. "That's an order, Lieutenant." My hands moved across the tactical display, executing commands I'd practiced 1,000 times. Targeting solutions materialized. Coordinates for the city, for the agricultural settlements, for every cluster of buildings that appeared on the scans. The ship's turbo-laser batteries locked onto their targets, and I heard the targeting computers chirp confirmation, ready to fire. Ready to kill 30,000 people who'd done nothing except exist in a place the Empire had decided must be destroyed. "All batteries report ready, Captain," I heard myself say. Druven stood at the viewport, and I saw tears on his face. "May the Force forgive us," he whispered, then louder, "All batteries commence bombardment. Execute base Delta Zero protocols." The inexorable shuddered as the turbo lasers opened fire. Green bolts of coherent energy lanced down through the atmosphere, and I watched on the tactical display as they struck the city, as buildings vaporized, as the population center simply ceased to exist in a cascade of explosions. We fired for 6 minutes, methodically targeting every coordinate I'd calculated, and the planet below transformed into a burning wound. The displays showed thermal blooms, atmospheric disruption, the complete destruction of everything we'd been sent to protect. No one on the bridge spoke. We just watched as we murdered a world. The bombardment lasted 4 hours. We destroyed the city first, then moved to the agricultural settlements, reducing each one to molten craters. We burned the fields, We vaporized the water treatment facilities. We shattered the infrastructure that sustained life. When we finished, Raltair III was a scorched ball of rock and ash, its atmosphere choked with particulate matter, its surface temperature elevated by 40 degrees, every structure and every living thing reduced to carbon and memory. I filed the tactical report mechanically, documenting firing solutions, ammunition expenditure, bombardment efficiency. The words looked clean on the screen. Ordnance delivered, targets neutralized, mission accomplished. But I could smell burning flesh through the ventilation system, though I knew that was impossible. Knew it was my mind breaking under the weight of what we'd done. 30,000 people. I'd killed them. My calculations, my targeting solutions, my hands on the controls that executed the order. Captain Druven retired to his quarters after filing his report to Sector Command. I heard later that he drank a bottle of engine coolant that night, that the medical team tried to save him, but the damage was too severe, that he died with my name on his lips, asking forgiveness for giving the order. The executive officer assumed command and maintained the crew's silence about what had happened. Raltair III was recorded as a successful counterinsurgency operation, a rebel stronghold eliminated, a necessary action in service to Imperial security. But something changed in the crew after Raltair III. We went about our duties with mechanical precision, executing orders, maintaining the ship, conducting patrols. But the certainty was gone. The belief that we served something noble, something necessary. We'd seen what the Empire really meant by order, and we carried that knowledge like a wound that wouldn't heal. Over the following months, I investigated quietly, using my security clearance to access files I wasn't supposed to read. I learned that Raltair III had been one of 17 planets subjected to Base Delta Zero operations that year. I learned that the intelligence reports justifying these bombardments were often fabricated or exaggerated, that the Empire used planetary destruction as a terror tactic to keep frontier worlds compliant. I learned that we weren't maintaining order. We were maintaining fear, and the difference was everything. The new captain was a younger officer, ambitious and ideologically committed, who spoke constantly about the necessity of absolute loyalty to the Emperor. He conducted mandatory political education sessions where we watched hologram recordings of Imperial propaganda, lessons about the weakness of the old Republic and the strength of the new order. I attended these sessions and said nothing, watching my fellow officers parrot the approved responses, seeing the deadness in their eyes. I began noticing things I'd previously dismissed, the way stormtroopers herded civilians during planetary occupations, the screams from detention centers where suspects were interrogated, the mass graves we glimpsed from orbit before bombardments erased them, the casual brutality that had always been present but that I'd rationalized as necessary for maintaining order. Now I saw it for what it was: systematic oppression, institutionalized cruelty, evil dressed in the uniform of authority. I couldn't speak openly. The crew was monitored by ISB informants, and expressing doubt about Imperial policy was enough to warrant arrest. I watched officers disappear, quietly reassigned after saying something that could be interpreted as seditious. I watched the new captain report a junior engineering officer who'd made a disparaging comment about the Emperor. The engineer was taken away by ISB agents, and we never saw him again. Loyalty through fear. Order through terror. I thought about deserting, but where would I go? The Empire controlled everything. I thought about suicide, but that felt like cowardice, like abandoning the responsibility for what I'd done. So I stayed, executing my duties with mechanical precision, feeling myself die a little more with each order I followed, each operation I supported, each time I chose survival over resistance. Then came the day that changed everything. We were conducting a routine patrol in the Quelon sector when we received an emergency transmission from an Imperial transport under attack by pirates. We jumped to the coordinates and found the transport disabled, its engines destroyed, 3 pirate corvettes circling like predators. Standard response would be to eliminate the pirates and rescue the transport crew. But when we scanned the transport's cargo manifest, I saw something that made my blood freeze. The transport was carrying prisoners, 247 individuals designated as political dissidents, being transferred to a labor camp on Kessel. I accessed their files, teachers, merchants, parents, children, their crimes, speaking against imperial policy, participating in protests, possessing banned literature, teaching history the Empire had declared seditious. None of them were rebels. None of them were violent. They'd simply refused to pretend the Empire was righteous, and they were about to die. The pirates were charging weapons, preparing to destroy the disabled transport, and claim salvage rights to the wreckage. The transport's captain was screaming for assistance, transmitting that life support was failing, that they had maybe 20 minutes before the prisoners suffocated. The new captain ordered me to calculate firing solutions to eliminate the pirates. I prepared the targeting data, locked onto the 3 corvettes, ready to execute. Then he gave an order. I'll hear until I die. After we eliminate the pirates, destroy the transport. I thought I'd misheard. Sir, the transport is severely damaged and prisoner custody cannot be maintained given our patrol schedule. Standard protocol for compromised prisoner transfers is to eliminate the prisoners rather than risk escape or rescue. Destroy the transport after we secure the area. I stared at him, understanding with perfect clarity that he was ordering me to murder 247 people because it was more convenient than helping them, not because they were dangerous, not because they threatened anything, because saving them would require effort, would disrupt our schedule, would be inconvenient. Sir, That's an order, Lieutenant. Execute the pirates, then execute the prisoners. Something broke inside me. Or perhaps something finally healed. I looked at the tactical display, at the 3 pirate corvettes, at the helpless transport, at the 247 lives I could save or destroy with the touch of a button. I thought about Raltair III, about 30,000 people I'd helped murder, about my father who died protecting people, about everything I'd believed when I joined the Imperial Navy. I made a choice. No, I said. The bridge went silent. The captain stared at me like I'd spoken an alien language. What did you say, Lieutenant? No, sir. I will not execute that order. His face went purple with rage. You are refusing a direct order during combat operations? That is mutiny, Lieutenant. That is treason. Security, place this officer under arrest immediately. 2 stormtroopers moved toward me, but I was faster. My hand went to my sidearm and I pulled my blaster, aiming it at the captain. The bridge erupted into chaos. Officers shouting, stormtroopers raising their weapons, the captain screaming for my immediate execution. Everyone stop, I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. I'm taking command of this vessel. Captain, you are relieved for cause, specifically for ordering the unlawful execution of Imperial prisoners. All officers, you have a choice. Follow orders that violate military law and basic decency, or stand with me. For a moment, absolute silence. Then the weapons officer stood from his station. I stand with you, Lieutenant. The navigation officer rose next, and I. One by one, most of the bridge crew stood. Not all, some remained loyal to the captain, some were too afraid to choose. But enough. Enough that when the stormtroopers looked around, uncertain where their loyalty should fall, they lowered their weapons. I ordered the captain and the officers, who'd remained loyal to him, confined to quarters under guard. Then I took the command chair, something I'd never been authorized to do, something that in any normal circumstance would mean immediate court-martial and execution. But nothing was normal anymore. I'd crossed a line and there was no going back. Tactical, I said. Destroy those pirate corvettes. Navigation, prepare to take the transport in tow. Engineering, when I need a damage assessment of the transport. Can we get them to a safe port? The crew moved with purpose, executing my orders with an efficiency born from years of service together. The Inexorable's turbo lasers spoke, and the pirate corvettes died in brilliant flashes. We maneuvered alongside the damaged transport and extended tractor beams, pulling them close. Engineering reported the transport was stabilized but would need significant repairs. I opened a communication channel to the transport's captain. This is the Imperial Star Destroyer Inexorable. We have secured the area and are taking you in tow. What is your status? The captain's voice was ragged with relief. Life support is critical. We have maybe 10 minutes left. Thank the Emperor, you arrived in time. Don't thank the Emperor, I said quietly. We're getting you to safety. We transported the prisoners to the Inexorable's holding cells, not as prisoners but as refugees under our protection. I walked through the holding area afterward and saw them, teachers holding frightened children, elderly couples clutching each other, young people who'd simply wanted their voices heard. They looked at me with confusion and desperate hope, not understanding why an Imperial officer had saved them. I didn't know how to explain that I'd saved them because I needed to save something, needed to prove to myself that not every order had to be followed, that some things were worth defying the Empire for. I'd helped murder 30,000 people at Raltair 3. I couldn't bring them back, but I could save these 247. That's when I understood there was no future for me in the Imperial Navy. I'd committed mutiny. I'd relieved a captain from command. I'd violated direct orders and saved prisoners designated for execution. When Sector Command learned what I'd done, they'd send ships to hunt us down, would execute me and everyone who'd supported me, would make us examples of what happened to those who betrayed the Empire. I called the senior staff to the conference room and laid out the situation. We were now enemies of the state. We could try to run, but the Empire was vast and its reach was long. Or we could accept that we'd crossed a line and face whatever consequences came. I told them I took full responsibility, that I'd testify they'd acted under duress, that I'd do everything possible to protect them. The weapons officer, a man named Terran who'd served aboard the Inexorable for 8 years, shook his head. We're all responsible, Lieutenant. We all made our choice. What I want to know is, what do we do now? That was the question, wasn't it? What do you do when you've betrayed everything you were taught to serve? When you've burned the bridges behind you? When there's no path forward except the one you make yourself? We transmit a message, I said slowly, the idea forming as I spoke. We declare ourselves officially lost. They stared at me. Lost, sir? The Inexorable officially declares itself lost in space, with all hands presumed dead. We'll broadcast a distress signal, claim we suffered catastrophic systems failure during the engagement with the pirates, that we're abandoning ship. We'll falsify casualty reports, make it look like the ship was destroyed, and then we disappear. Disappear to where? Terran asked. Somewhere the Empire doesn't look, the unknown regions maybe, or deep into the outer rim. Somewhere we can start over, away from everything we've been part of. It was insane. It was mutiny on a scale that went beyond anything I'd imagined. But as I looked at the faces around the table, I saw understanding, saw the same exhaustion and moral horror I felt, saw people who'd reached the limit of what they could serve. What about the prisoners? Someone asked. We take them with us, drop them somewhere safe, somewhere they can start new lives. They're free. We're all free, or as free as anyone can be after what we've done. We spent the next 48 hours preparing. We manufactured a convincing crisis, transmitted a distress signal claiming the ship's reactor was failing after the engagement, that we were abandoning ship, that all hands were evacuating in escape pods. We falsified casualty reports, created records showing the entire crew had perished when the reactor went critical. We even scattered some actual debris, personal effects, a few escape pods, enough wreckage to make the story believable if anyone investigated. Then we transmitted the final message, the one that would make us officially dead. This is the Imperial Star Destroyer Inexorable. We have suffered catastrophic systems failure. Reactor containment has failed. All hands are abandoning ship. May the Empire endure forever. I recorded that message myself, making my voice sound desperate and afraid, putting into it every ounce of conviction I could muster. Let the Empire believe we died loyal servants. Let them record us as heroes who perished in the line of duty. The truth that we'd chosen to die to the Empire in order to live as free beings would remain our secret. We shut down all communication systems, powered down every transponder and tracking beacon, and turned the Inexorable toward the unknown regions. A Victory-class Star Destroyer simply vanishing into uncharted space, taking its crew of over 5,000 personnel and 247 freed prisoners into exile. It should have been impossible. The Empire should have tracked us, should have found us, should have brought us to justice. But in the chaos of the galactic civil war, with rebel cells attacking Imperial facilities across the galaxy, with resources stretched thin and attention focused on more immediate threats, one missing Star Destroyer wasn't enough of a priority to warrant a massive search, especially one that was officially destroyed, its crew officially dead, its loss officially mourned and forgotten. We spent 6 months navigating through uncharted space, using old Clone Wars-era navigation data and taking risks that would have terrified any sane captain. We encountered things I still don't have names for: spatial anomalies, derelict vessels from civilizations dead millennia, phenomena that made no sense according to any physical laws I understood. We lost 53 crew members during that journey. Accidents, diseases we couldn't treat with our limited medical supplies. One suicide from an officer who couldn't bear the isolation, but we survived. And eventually, we found what we were looking for: a habitable world in a system so remote that no one had ever bothered to survey it properly. The planet had a breathable atmosphere, liquid water, and no indigenous intelligent species. It was perfect, a place to start over, to build something that wasn't founded on fear and oppression. We landed the Inexorable on the planet's largest continent and began the process of transforming a warship into a colony. We stripped the vessel for materials. Hull plates became building foundations. Power systems became generators for settlements. Life support systems became climate control for habitation domes. The ship that had been a symbol of Imperial power became homes, schools, farms. We cannibalized our past to build a future. The prisoners we'd saved chose to stay. Where else could they go? We were all exiles now, all refugees from the Empire's cruelty. We shared the work, former officers and political dissidents laboring side by side, stormtroopers and teachers cooperating to build infrastructure, everyone contributing because survival demanded it. The old hierarchies dissolved. Ranks meant nothing here. We were just people trying to live. I took no leadership role in the colony. I'd spent enough of my life giving orders, following orders, serving institutions that demanded obedience. Let others lead. Let others decide our future. I became a farmer, working soil with hands that had once calculated firing solutions for planetary bombardments. The work was hard, honest, simple. I planted seeds and watched them grow, and there was something healing in that, in creating life instead of taking it. Years passed. The colony grew. Children were born, the first generation to grow up free from the empire, free from the rebellion, free from the endless war that consumed the galaxy. I watched them play in fields where nothing had ever died by my hand, and I felt something like peace, though the ghosts of Raltair III never left me. We monitored transmissions from known space, following the war's progress through intercepted communications. We learned about the Battle of Yavin, about the Death Star's destruction, about the rebellion's growing strength. We learned about Hoth, about Cloud City, about the Empire's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain control. And eventually, we learned about Endor, about the Emperor's death, about the Empire's collapse. The day we received confirmation that Palpatine was dead, the colony held a celebration. People danced, sang, wept with relief. The nightmare that had consumed the galaxy for decades was finally ending. The Empire that had ordered us to commit atrocities, that had demanded absolute obedience, that had corrupted everything it touched, it was dying. I didn't celebrate. I sat alone outside my small house and stared at the stars, thinking about everyone who'd died to reach this moment. 30,000 on Raltair III, millions more on Alderaan. The countless billions who'd perished in the Clone Wars, in the rebellion, in the endless cycle of violence that had defined my lifetime. What did victory mean when measured against that cost? But the children were celebrating, and perhaps that was enough. Perhaps they'd build something better than what we'd had. Perhaps they'd learn from our mistakes. Would create a galaxy where star destroyers weren't needed, where no one had to choose between following orders and being human. 20 years have passed since Endor. The colony is thriving, a small, isolated world that exists on no charts, known to no government. The new republic rose and established order of a different kind, one that claims to honor democracy and freedom. I wonder sometimes if they're better than the Empire, or just better at hiding their sins. Power corrupts, regardless of the ideals it claims to serve. I'm old now, my hair gray, my hands scarred from decades of farm work. Most of the original crew has passed on, their stories buried with them. The children have grown into adults who barely remember the Empire, who know the war only through the tales we reluctantly share. They ask me sometimes what it was like, serving aboard a star destroyer. I tell them it was necessary, that we believed we were maintaining order, that we didn't understand what we were serving until it was too late. I don't tell them about Raltair III. Some horrors are too heavy to pass on. But I've been recording this message because someone needs to know the truth. Needs to understand that the Empire wasn't just Palpatine and Vader, wasn't just Grand Moffs and Dark Lords. It was ordinary people like me, following orders, believing in duty, convincing ourselves that atrocities were necessary for the greater good. It was the slow corruption of conscience, the gradual acceptance of evil, the choice to prioritize obedience over humanity. The inexorable officially declared itself lost, and in a way, that was true. We were lost, lost in our certainty, lost in our obedience, lost in the belief that order justified murder. Only by admitting we were lost could we begin to find our way. I don't know if what we did was right. We abandoned our posts, stole an Imperial warship, defied orders, fled our responsibilities. We're deserters and mutineers by any legal definition, but we also stopped being complicit in evil, stopped following orders that demanded we sacrifice our humanity. We saved 247 people who would have died, and we gave 5,000 crew members a chance to live as something other than the Empire's instruments. I still smell ozone sometimes, still feel the deck plates humming beneath my feet, still hear Captain Druven's voice giving the order to commence bombardment. The ghosts don't leave. The dead don't forgive. But the children play in the fields, and their laughter is clean and bright, and perhaps that's the only redemption any of us deserve. Not forgiveness, but the chance to create something better than what we destroyed. The inexorable is gone now, cannibalized for parts, transformed into homes and tools and the infrastructure of life. The ship that once rained death from the sky became the foundation for a community built on the ruins of empire. There's poetry in that, I suppose, or irony, or just the desperate hope that even the worst of us can choose differently, can declare ourselves lost, and in that admission find a path to something like salvation. I'm recording this so that someone someday will understand what it cost to walk away, will understand that the hardest battles aren't fought with turbo lasers and TIE fighters but in the moments when you have to choose between the orders you've been given and the person you want to be. That courage isn't about following orders or maintaining discipline. It's about knowing when to disobey, when to mutiny, when to declare yourself lost so you can start finding your way. The Empire is dead. Long live the Empire. It exists in everyone who ever chose obedience over conscience, duty over decency, order over justice. It exists in me, in the calculations I made, the targets I designated, the lives I helped extinguish. I can't undo what I did. I can only ensure it's remembered, that someone knows the truth, that the price of serving evil is documented even if it can never be repaid. This is the confession of the inexorable, a star destroyer that officially declared itself lost, and a crew that chose exile over complicity. We were never heroes. We were just people who finally said no, who chose to be lost rather than continue serving death. It wasn't enough. It will never be enough. But it was all we could do, and perhaps that's the only epitaph that matters. They were lost, but they chose their own direction, and in that choice, they finally found something worth saving. The truth. I murdered 30,000 people at Raltair 3 and saved 247 during a mutiny, and I don't know which act defines me more. The Empire taught me that obedience was virtue, that order justified atrocity, that duty meant suppressing conscience. I believed it until believing became impossible, until I had to choose between staying loyal to evil or declaring myself lost. We declared the inexorable lost and fled into exile, 5,000 people abandoning everything to stop being complicit in murder. I can't say we redeemed ourselves. You don't redeem genocide by deserting, but we stopped. We refused to continue. We chose to be lost rather than found as monsters. The children here don't know what their parents were, what sins we carry. That's mercy, perhaps. Or just cowardice, hiding our truth so they can build better futures. I'm dying now, this confession my only monument. Remember this, the Empire wasn't just Palpatine. It was all of us who followed orders, who calculated firing solutions, who convinced ourselves murder was duty. Saying no costs everything, but continuing costs your soul. We declared ourselves lost. In that admission, we found the only freedom that mattered, the freedom to stop.